Before I tell you how I absolutely humbled my delusional husband, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you are not going to want to miss the updates on this mess. Trust me, you need to hear this. I never thought I would be the woman posting about her marriage online, but the level of audacity I dealt with last night has genuinely left me questioning reality. I am 32 years old, and for the last 8 months, I have been the sole provider for our household. My husband, Mark, who is 34, was laid off from his sales job almost a year ago. At first, I was incredibly supportive. I get it, the job market is tough and corporate layoffs are brutal. I told him to take a month to decompress, get his head right, and then jump back into the search. I covered the mortgage, the utilities, the car payments, and the groceries without a single complaint. That was the deal we made when we got married, for richer or for poorer, right? But somewhere along the line, taking a month to decompress turned into 8 months of playing Call of Duty until 4 in the morning and sleeping until noon. I work as a senior project manager at a tech firm. My days are long, stressful, and mentally draining. I leave the house at 7 in the morning, and I'm lucky if I get home by 6:30. For the last few months, the dynamic in our house has shifted from a partnership to me basically being a single mother to a grown man. You would think that if one partner is working 50 hours a week to keep the lights on, the other partner, who is home 24/7, might pick up a vacuum cleaner or wash a dish. Not Mark. I come home to a sink full of crusty dishes, laundry piles on the couch, and him screaming at his television screen in the living room. Whenever I bring it up, he gives me the same tired excuse that looking for a job is a full-time job and he's networking all day. But I checked his LinkedIn. His profile hasn't been updated since last year. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to be the supportive wife who doesn't nag, but the financial pressure is real. Inflation is killing us, our property taxes just went up, and carrying 2 people on one salary in this economy is suffocating. I have cut back on everything. I stopped getting my nails done, I canceled my gym membership and started running outside, and I switched us to generic brands for almost everything. I am making sacrifices daily to keep us afloat, while he orders DoorDash for lunch because he's too busy to make a sandwich. The explosion happened yesterday. It was a Tuesday, usually my most stressful day of the week. I had back-to-back meetings, a client crisis, and I skipped lunch because I didn't have time to eat. By the time I clocked out, I was starving and exhausted. I remembered we were completely out of food because Mark had texted me at 2 in the afternoon asking, "What's for dinner?" like I'm his personal chef. So, despite my feet throbbing, I dragged myself to the grocery store. I did a full shop for the week. I bought chicken, ground turkey, rice, veggies, eggs, milk, and yes, I bought a few nice things for myself. I bought a small container of those expensive organic blueberries and a wedge of brie cheese because I felt like I deserved a treat after the week I was having. The total came to about $250. It hurt to see the number on the screen, but that's just what food costs right now. I loaded the bags into the car, drove home, and hauled all 8 bags into the kitchen by myself. Mark didn't even look up from his phone when I walked in. He was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through Twitter. He didn't offer to help carry the bags. He didn't ask how my day was. He just watched me struggle to lift a gallon of milk onto the counter. I was already annoyed, but I bit my tongue. I started unpacking the groceries, trying to organize the fridge, when he finally decided to engage. He stood up, walked over, and picked up the receipt that I had left on the counter. I saw his eyes widen. He let out this dramatic whistle and shook his head. He looked at me with this mix of disgust and disbelief that made my blood run cold. He asked me if I was insane spending that much money on a Tuesday. He started reading the items off the receipt out loud, mocking the prices. He pointed out the brie cheese and the blueberries and asked, "Since when do we eat like royalty?" I tried to explain that this was food for the entire week for both of us and that prices are high everywhere. I tried to stay calm. I told him to put the receipt down and maybe help me put the vegetables away. That is when he snapped. He slammed the receipt down on the counter so hard the fruit bowl rattled. He looked me dead in the eye with genuine anger and shouted that I am out of control. Then he said the sentence that is currently replaying in my head on a loop. He said, "You are eating me out of house and home, Sarah. You have no concept of money. You're spending us into the poorhouse because you lack discipline." I froze. I actually froze with a bag of frozen peas in my hand. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. I waited for him to laugh and say he was joking, but he wasn't. He was red in the face, veins bulging in his neck, acting like I had just gambled away our life savings. I asked him to repeat himself. I asked him to clarify exactly whose house and home I was eating him out of. He doubled down. He started ranting about how he worked hard for years to build our savings and how I'm draining it all away with my lavish lifestyle. I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't hurt. It was pure, unadulterated rage. I looked at this man standing in the kitchen of the house that I pay the mortgage on. I looked at the clothes he was wearing that I bought. I looked at the food on the counter that I paid for with the money I earned while he sat on the couch. And he had the nerve to tell me I was eating him out of house and home? I took a very deep breath. I put the peas down on the counter very slowly. I turned to him and asked him a simple question. I asked him when the last time was that he contributed a single dollar to this bank account. He stuttered. He tried to deflect. He said that wasn't the point and that marriage is a partnership. I cut him off. I raised my voice, which I rarely do. I reminded him that for 8 months, the only direct deposit hitting our account has my name on it. I reminded him that the savings he was talking about were gone 3 months ago because we used them to pay off his credit card debt that he racked up buying tech gadgets we didn't need. I told him that he doesn't get to police the grocery budget when he contributes $0 to it. I told him that if he wants to have a say in whether I buy brie cheese or not, he needs to have a job. You would think this would shut him up. You would think the reality check would make him apologize, but narcissists don't work that way. Mark didn't back down. Instead, he switched tactics. He started laughing, a cold, condescending laugh. He told me I was being financial abusive by holding his unemployment over his head. He said I was emasculating him and that I should be supportive instead of throwing money in his face. He told me that technically half of everything I earn is his because we are married, so he has every right to tell me how to spend our money. He grabbed the bag of blueberries, my expensive blueberries, and opened them. He started eating them by the handful while staring at me, just to be petty. He said, "Since I own half of these, I guess I'll have a snack." I watched him eat the fruit I had bought as a small reward for my 60-hour work week. I watched the juice stain his fingers. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about groceries. This wasn't just about him being stressed over job hunting. This was about him losing respect for me. This was about him getting comfortable with using me. He didn't see me as his wife anymore. He saw me as a resource, an ATM that also did his laundry. And the worst part was the entitlement, the absolute conviction that he had the right to scream at me about spending $200 on survival necessities while he contributed absolutely nothing. I didn't yell anymore. I didn't scream. I felt this eerie calm wash over me. It's the kind of calm you feel right before you make a decision that changes everything. I looked at him and said, "Okay, Mark, you're right. I've been spending too much of our money. I need to get my spending under control. Thank you for opening my eyes." He looked confused for a second, probably expecting me to keep fighting, but then he smirked, looking satisfied that he had won the argument. He grabbed a bag of chips from the counter and walked back to the living room, yelling over his shoulder, "Glad you finally see sense, babe. Make sure dinner is ready by 7. I'm starving." I stood there in the kitchen, listening to the sound of the TV turning back on. I looked at the groceries, I looked at the receipt, and I smiled because Mark had just made a fatal error. He wanted me to stop spending his money. He wanted me to be more disciplined. Well, I was about to give him exactly what he asked for. I grabbed my car keys, picked up every single bag of groceries I had just unpacked, except for the open blueberries, and I loaded them right back into the car. If I'm eating him out of house and home, then I guess I better remove the temptation. This was the beginning of my malicious compliance, and let me tell you, he was not ready for what was coming next. After I loaded every single grocery bag back into my SUV, I didn't just drive around the block. I drove straight to my sister's house. She's my best friend and the only person who knows how bad things have actually been getting with Mark. I walked into her kitchen and dumped $200 worth of fresh produce, meat, and snacks on her counter. I told her, "Eat it, freeze it, or give it away, but it's not going back into my house." She was shocked, but once I told her what Mark had said, that I was eating him out of house and home while he sat on his couch playing video games, she totally got it. We sat there for an hour venting, and she reminded me of something I had forgotten. She reminded me that I'm the one on the lease for our apartment, and the car he drives, that's in my name too. I had been so busy trying to be a good wife that I let him convince me that his lack of effort was my responsibility to fix. Not anymore. I stayed at my sister's until about 10 o'clock that night. I wanted to make sure Mark had plenty of time to get hungry. When I finally pulled back into our driveway, the house was dark except for the flickering light of the TV in the living room. I walked in and the smell of stale air and old sweat hit me immediately. Mark was sprawled out on the sofa, surrounded by empty soda cans. He didn't even look up at first. He just groaned and asked, "Where have you been? I thought you were making dinner. I ended up having to eat some old cereal because there was nothing in the fridge." I felt a surge of satisfaction. I walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator door. It was completely empty, except for a jar of pickles and some mustard. I turned to him and said very calmly, "Oh, I took your advice, Mark. You said I was spending too much and eating us out of house and home, so I returned the groceries. I realized you were right. We need to save every penny." He sat up then, his eyes wide with confusion. He asked me what I meant by returned them. I told him that since he was so concerned about the budget, I decided we should only buy what is absolutely essential for survival. And since I'm the one working, I'll be eating my meals at the office or picking something up for myself on the way home. I told him that from now on, he is responsible for his own food. After all, if he's so worried about his money being spent, he should be happy to manage his portion of it. He started to laugh, thinking I was bluffing. He told me I was being dramatic and that I needed to stop acting like a child. He said, "Sarah, stop it. Go to the store tomorrow and get some real food. I'm actually hungry." I just looked at him, smiled, and went upstairs to bed. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I just went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early, got dressed in my best suit, and headed out. I stopped at a high-end cafe near my office and bought a massive breakfast burrito and a large iced coffee. I took a picture of it and posted it on my Instagram story, something I never do, knowing he would see it. Within 10 minutes, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Where is the coffee for me? And seriously, there is no bread in the house. What am I supposed to eat?" I didn't reply. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and had one of the most productive days at work I've had in months. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't worrying about what he wanted for dinner or if he had finished the laundry I asked him to do. I focused on me. I realized that by carrying him for so long, I had been neglecting my own peace of mind. When I got home that evening, the house was a disaster. It looked like he had gone on a rampage through the pantry looking for hidden snacks. He was standing in the kitchen and he looked furious. He didn't even wait for me to put my bag down before he started yelling. He called me selfish. He said I was starving him and that this was some kind of sick power trip. He told me that as his wife, it was my job to make sure the household was running. I let him rant for a good 5 minutes. I let him get it all out. When he finally stopped to catch his breath, I reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of papers. They weren't divorce papers, not yet, but they were something that hit him just as hard. It was a detailed breakdown of every single bill I had paid over the last 8 months. Rent, electricity, water, internet, car insurance, and his cell phone bill. I laid the papers out on the kitchen island. I told him, since you're so worried about the finances, let's look at the numbers together. This is what it costs to run this house and home you're so worried about me eating you out of. It comes to about $4,000 a month. In 8 months, that's $32,000, all of which came from my salary. I pointed to the zero at the bottom of his contribution column. I told him that I had contacted the service providers today. I told him that as of tomorrow, I was removing his name from the authorized users on my credit card. I also told him that I had changed the Wi-Fi password. If he wanted the new one, he could get it once he showed me a confirmed job offer. He looked like I had slapped him. He tried to say that I couldn't do that the internet was a human right. I told him that high-speed internet for gaming is a luxury, not a right, and luxuries are for people who contribute. The entitlement in his eyes started to turn into fear. He realized that the sweet, supportive Sarah, who used to apologize for being 10 minutes late with dinner, was gone. He tried to change his tone. He tried to come over and put his hand on my shoulder, using that soft, manipulative voice he uses when he wants something. He said, "Babe, come on. I was just stressed yesterday. I didn't mean those things. You know I love you. Let's just go get some pizza and forget this happened." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. I told him that I wasn't hungry because I had already eaten a steak dinner on my way home, alone. I told him that the pizza and forget it days were over. I told him he had 24 hours to find a way to feed himself because I was officially done being his benefactor. That night, he slept on the couch. Not because I kicked him out of bed, but because he was too pouting and angry to be near me. I slept like a baby. The next day was Thursday, and things got even more intense. I got a notification on my phone that there was an attempted charge on my credit card for $42 from a local burger joint. It was declined, of course. A few minutes later, my phone started blowing up with calls from Mark. I ignored them. When I finally got home, he was sitting on the front porch because I had also taken the spare key I usually keep under the mat, and he had managed to lock himself out while checking the mail. He looked pathetic. His hair was greasy, his shirt was wrinkled, and he looked genuinely hungry. But instead of feeling pity, I felt a cold sense of justice. He looked at me and said, "I haven't eaten anything but a granola bar in 24 hours, Sarah. Is this what you want? Do you want me to starve?" I unlocked the door, walked inside, and looked at him. I told him, "Mark, you're a 34-year-old man in the United States of America. You are not starving. You are experiencing the consequences of your own arrogance. You told me I was eating you out of house and home when I was the only one putting food in the fridge. Now the fridge is empty. If you want it full, figure it out." He followed me into the house, screaming that I was being cruel. He said he was going to call his mother and tell her how I was treating him. I told him to go ahead. In fact, I told him that if he wanted to go live with his mother so she could feed him, I would even help him pack his bags. That shut him up real quick. He knows his mother would be even harder on him than I am. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more move to make that would finally break his delusion of grandeur. By Friday morning, the atmosphere in the house was heavy, but for the first time in years, I felt light. Mark had spent the previous evening calling every friend he had, trying to find someone to vent to, but word had already gotten out. It turns out when you spend 8 months bragging to your buddies about how your wife takes care of everything while you level up in video games, they don't have much sympathy for you when she finally stops. I woke up, did my skincare routine, and headed downstairs. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, actually open to a job board for the first time in months. He looked up at me, his face pale, and tried one last time to play the victim. He told me that he had applied for 3 jobs that morning and asked if that was enough to earn him a sandwich. I didn't even look at him. I just grabbed my keys and said, "Actions earn things, Mark, not promises." I spent my lunch break that day meeting with a divorce attorney. It wasn't a decision I made out of spite. It was a decision I made out of self-preservation. Looking at the paperwork, I realized how much of myself I had shrunk to fit into a marriage that had become a parasite-host relationship. My attorney told me that since I was the primary breadwinner and the lease was in my name, I had a very strong case for moving on quickly. I walked out of that office feeling like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I drove to the grocery store on my way home, but this time I didn't buy a week's worth of food for 2. I bought exactly what I wanted to eat for the night: a fresh salmon fillet, some asparagus, and a bottle of wine. When I walked into the house, Mark was standing there, looking expectant. He saw the single small bag in my hand and his face fell. He asked, "Is that it? What am I supposed to eat tonight?" I walked past him, set my bag on the counter, and turned around to face him. I told him very clearly that I had filed for a legal separation. I told him that I had given him 8 months of grace, 8 months of support, and 8 months of my life, and in return, he had insulted my character and my hard work. I told him that he had 30 days to find a job and a new place to live. He tried to start the financial abuse argument again, but I cut him off. I told him, "Mark, you are not a victim. You are a capable man who chose to be lazy. You told me I was eating you out of house and home. Well, now you have the whole house and home to yourself to figure out how to pay for. I'm moving into a short-term rental tomorrow morning." He was speechless. He actually started crying, but I realized they weren't tears of heartbreak. They were tears of panic because his free ride was officially over. The next morning, my sister and 2 of our cousins showed up with a moving truck. We moved my things out in less than 3 hours. Mark sat on the porch the entire time, watching us, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. He tried to stop me as I was walking to my car for the last time. He grabbed my arm and begged me to stay, promising that he would change, that he would have a job by Monday, that he would never mention the grocery bill again. I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no love, just a profound sense of exhaustion. I told him, "The problem isn't the groceries, Mark. The problem is that you thought so little of me that you felt comfortable biting the hand that fed you. I'm not your mother, and I'm definitely not your bank. I'm a woman who deserves a partner, not a project." It's been 3 weeks since I moved out. I've been staying in a beautiful, sun-drenched Airbnb by the coast. My bank account is already looking healthier because I'm not funding a lifestyle for 2 people. I've been eating my brie cheese and my expensive blueberries every single morning, and they have never tasted better. I heard through mutual friends that Mark had to move back in with his parents because he couldn't even make the first week's utility payments on his own. He's finally working a shift job at a warehouse, which is exactly what he should have been doing months ago instead of complaining about my spending. I realized that by protecting him from the consequences of his laziness, I was actually the one holding him back. Now he's finally learning what it means to be an adult in the real world. I'm sharing this story because I know there are so many of you out there, especially women, who are carrying the entire weight of your household while being disrespected for it. We are taught to be supportive and patient, but there is a very fine line between being a supportive partner and being an enabler. If someone is comfortable watching you drown while they sit on the shore, they don't love you. They love the safety you provide. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for the money you earn or the way you choose to live your life, especially if they aren't contributing a single cent to the table. I lost a husband, but I found my self respect. And let me tell you, that is a trade I would make every single day of the week. Thank you so much for sticking around to hear the end of this journey. It's been a wild ride, and your support in the comments has honestly kept me going through some of the lonelier nights. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Have you ever been told you were spending too much by someone who wasn't spending anything at all? I want to hear your stories in the comments. Let's support each other and stop letting people walk all over us. I'll see you in the next update where I might just show you guys the new apartment I'm looking at. Stay strong and remember, you are not a bank. You are a queen.